You know, for over a decade, there was this one question in tennis. It was the debate, the one that could start an argument in any clubhouse, on any forum, anywhere in the world. And it wasn't about who had more titles. It was about one single shot.
Right, let's just get straight into it. Federer or Nadal? Was it Roger's smooth, effortless, point-ending masterpiece? Or was it Rafa's brutal, heavy, match-warping weapon? To really figure this out, we've got to go deeper than just gut feelings. We're going to look at the mechanics, the actual physics, and the different philosophies behind two of the greatest shots the game has ever seen.
So the whole case for Federer, it pretty much comes down to this: pure, unfiltered aggression. His forehand was like a surgeon's scalpel. He'd step in, take the ball super early, and just steal time from his opponents. It was all about ending the point right then and there with a clean, destructive winner.
But then you have the other side of the coin. Nadal's forehand, well, it wasn't just a shot, it was an entire game plan. It was this heavy, looping monster of a ball that didn't just win a point, it completely broke down an opponent's will, forcing one error after another. It was, simply put, relentless.
So how in the world can two shots be so different, but both be so ridiculously dominant? Well, to get that, we have to strip the forehand down to its basic parts. And it all, and I mean all, starts with how you hold the racket.
The grip is everything. It's the foundation. Seriously, think of it like the shot's DNA. It basically decides what the racket face wants to do the second it hits the ball. And as you're about to see, Federer and Nadal, they had completely different DNA. And this slide just lays that DNA out perfectly. On one hand, you have Federer's grip. It was like a versatile Swiss Army knife. He could flatten the ball out for a winner, or he could brush up and add spin when he needed to. But Nadal's grip, that was a specialized, heavy-duty machine built for pretty much one thing, creating the most vicious topspin imaginable.
And of course, the footwork tells the same story. Federer often used that classic neutral stance, stepping into the court. It was all about moving forward, all about attacking. But Nadal, the master defender, lived in that open stance. It let him unleash that crazy rotational power, even on the run, and then get back to the middle of the court in a blink.
Okay. We've talked grips, we've talked stances, but to really, truly get the Nadal forehand and why it was such a nightmare to play against, we have to talk about physics. This is where the magic and the science really kicks in. I mean, just look at that number, 3,200 revolutions per minute. To put that in perspective, your average pro on tour is somewhere around 2,000. Even Federer on a heavy ball was around 3,000. Nadal was just playing a different sport sometimes. And all that spin does something absolutely wild to the ball. It's all because of this thing called the Magnus effect. Now, it sounds super complicated, but the idea is actually pretty simple. As the ball spins forward through the air, it creates high pressure on top and low pressure underneath. And that pressure difference? It acts like an invisible hand, literally forcing the ball to dive downward.
And this is the payoff. That downward force is why Nadal could hit with so much power and still have the ball drop safely in the court. It gave him a huge margin for error. But the real weapon is what happens after the bounce. All that spin grips the court, and the ball just explodes upwards, kicking up high and heavy. It's a total nightmare to deal with.
Okay, so here's the crucial part. This wasn't just some cool physics trick. Nadal turned this into a weapon. He had a game plan, and it was devastatingly simple. Pound that high-kicking forehand over and over again to Federer's one-handed backhand. That ball would jump up to shoulder height, forcing Federer into a weak position, and he'd either miss or pop up a short ball that Rafa would just crush.
All right, let's put all the pieces together now. We've got the technique, we've got the physics. What this all adds up to isn't just two different ways to hit a forehand, it's two completely different philosophies on how to win a tennis match. Federer's whole philosophy was about time. He wanted to compress the point, to take time away from you by hitting early and flat. Nadal's philosophy was all about space and geometry. He wanted to expand the court, creating insane angles and high bounces to push you back and force you into uncomfortable positions. You've got one guy trying to land a knockout punch and the other dragging you into a war of attrition. So, which one was better? The artist of timing or the master of geometry? The puncher or the grinder? For years, this was the debate. But the thing is, the answer was never about who. It was always about where. This chart tells the whole story, doesn't it? On slow courts, especially clay, Nadal was just on another planet. Look at that win rate. But on fast courts, the tables turned and Federer had the clear advantage. The data is undeniable. The effectiveness of their best shots was completely tied to the surface they were playing on. And here's the simple reason why.
Slow, gritty clay courts literally grab onto Nadal's spinning ball and make that high kick even more violent. But on fast, slick grass courts, they do the exact opposite. They let Federer's flatter shot just skid through, staying low and rushing his opponents. The debate was never about which forehand was better in a vacuum. It was about which one was perfectly engineered for the ground beneath their feet.
So that brings us to the big takeaway here. This was never really a competition to build the one single best forehand in the world.
They were just asking two totally different questions. Federer was asking, how can I end this point as fast and as cleanly as possible? And Nadal was asking, how can I make this point as physically brutal and geometrically impossible for my opponent as I can? And the amazing thing is, each of them built the absolute perfect answer. Federer's forehand was a precision instrument, a surgical tool. Nadal's was a heavy weapon, a sledgehammer. One was built to take time away from you, the other was built to create space. Two perfect solutions to two very different problems.
And in the end, maybe this forum user just said it best. They weren't just great shots, they were defining shots. They both stood completely alone, and they both pushed the entire sport into the future.
So the real answer to who had the greater forehand is, well, it's both. There were two different peaks of tennis evolution, engineered for their time. Which leaves us with one last, really interesting question to think about. As the game keeps getting faster and the athletes get even more powerful, what on earth will the forehand of the future look like?